This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, hello. This is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome once again to the Spirit and Wellness Show. Or at least I hope it's once again. Welcome to those of you for whom this is a first-time deal and you haven't heard the show before. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. This show is, it's where we take a look at the days and weeks events, happenings in the world, politics, international news, technology breakthroughs, the economy, all of the things that we interact with on a daily or weekly basis, whether it be through social media or whether it be through traditional media, 24-hour news cycles. It often feels like we can't get away from such stories, and they tend to be stories that can sometimes push a lot of buttons. We live in a environment now which is fostering, let's put it this way, the competition for your attention is, I think, at a point that it never has been before. You have, as I mentioned, the 24-hour news cycles. You have the traditional media, you have newspapers who are trying to survive, you have the internet, of course, and you have social media, and many people have smartphones, which also, and tablets, which also are conduits for a lot of information, and information that can feel overwhelming. So what we do here, what this show is about taking a step back and looking at this information from a higher perspective to see what stories we are telling, because essentially we create these things. We create this world. We create these situations because they are stories we are telling about ourselves. And they are situations that we, for one reason or another, feel a need to experience. Because if we didn't feel the need to experience them, they wouldn't be there. And so, what we do is to accept that as a truth. That these are our creations, that they are stories we're telling, and they're here for a reason, and let's go in and delve in and find out what it is. See if we get an idea of what it is. And as soon as we go in, especially if you're dealing with stories or situations or, news reports and things that make you very uncomfortable, those are the top places to go, to delve into that discomfort and feel it fully, At this point, you want to try at least to turn off the rational mind that, lists the reasons why this makes you uncomfortable, and just feel it. And recognize it as a creation and begin to take energy from it. Because once you take energy from a situation, it changes that situation. I mean, quantum physics is telling us all about how powerful that is. And as you begin to understand that you are creating this story and that it isn't real per se, but a creation, when you understand the illusory aspect of much of what we give our energy to, believing in the mundane or material world, once you begin to see the truth of that, well, that changes things completely. And so if you're disturbed, as many people have been, on one thing or another, one side or the other of an issue, maybe the election of Donald Trump disturbs you, maybe this week's news about the failure to repeal and replace Obamacare, maybe if you're on that side of the aisle, that's upsetting to you. Whatever it is, you take the step back, you go inside, and you feel what you feel. And you get the understanding that this is a creation meant to support growth in ways that you may not particularly understand or think immediately are positive, but they are. Well, I won't say positive, because once we start talking about positive, then we're back to dualities of positive and negative, good, bad. Those don't apply. These are, and they're there for your support and your evolution as a spiritual being. And, I noticed, when I started doing this show years back, I noticed there were all kinds of perspectives on the news, There were people on the right, on talk radio, screaming about one thing or another. That led to there being an attempt, and some successful attempts, at radio on the left. Also, not so much screaming, but more complaining, making fun of. This is not to say that either one of those types of shows don't have things to offer, don't have truth to offer, and quite often things that are missed from one spin of the news are found in another spin of the news. But we do live in an environment right now where news tends to be spun in one direction or another. There's an article in, I think it's the New York Times, which asks if truth is dead. And the reason it's asking that question is because in this current political climate, there certainly have been statements made, particularly from the president, that have no basis in what we would think of as fact. And perhaps the most famous example of this, or the sort of the turning point of this, is the statement by one of the president's representatives, Ms. Kellyanne Conway, who, in talking to the news media, trying to explain a falsehood that had been told and supported by the president's spokesman, said that what he was talking about, he was approaching it with alternative facts. That's become a watchword, alternative facts. Very interesting concept. Can you have alternative facts? Which brings us to the idea of what is truth? Does it exist at all? And can truth die? Which is really the big question that the article doesn't seem to get to. I would say, just for simplicity's sake, in a way, that there is truth with a lowercase t, which is what this article is talking about. Evading. And then there's truth with a capital T. And since this show approaches things from the point of view of truth with a capital T, from that perspective, none of it is truth. Even though it seems very convincing, even though the facts are there, none of it is truth. None of it is real. The only truth is the oneness that I explained, and that we are creating it all. And those things that we perceive as bad or good or true or false aren't real. That's coming from truth with a capital T. Now, when you're playing the game, when you're involved in everyday life and you're talking about truth with a lowercase t, well, there are things within the parameters of our game that we play which we recognize as being true, and things that we recognize as being false within the parameters of the entire illusion, which is false to begin with. But since we're in that, we play that game. So, yes, there are things called facts that tell us whether something that someone is saying is actually true with a lowercase t. And there are things that are false that the facts would seem to contradict. So in that sense, yes, there is a muddle going on, and it's a very coordinated attempt to muddle communication between people, the truth of what's going on, the intention of people. So from that perspective, these are statements that are meant to muddle, to confuse, or just to throw a monkey wrench into things. So when the president accuses our former president of wiretapping him, when there's nothing to show that ever actually happened, and people from the top of the FBI, Mr. James Comey on down, are puzzled as to how you could even come to that conclusion. These are attempts to, throw our faith in what others tell us into confusion. But again, coming from the higher perspective, perhaps we all need to have a higher kind of faith, in an understanding that as none of it is true, we need to take everything that is told to us with a fervor and a passion and a total confidence in complete rightness. We need to take that with a grain of salt. And if we're using the higher perspective, we can see into things. And we can see how this person who's saying this may have, reason to say it. But mostly what we see are intention. When we come from the higher perspective, we see intention.